Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is XFerginatorX and I'm back with another video. I know I haven't done one in a long time, but I just want to do one because of the fact that E3 2021 is coming out. They've already been teasing about a trailer, so we're hoping to see another gameplay of Halo Infinite. Not sure what it's going to be about, but I just want to cover some of the different things that the community has been wondering about, like just like concerns of things that they've seen from past videos and pictures and stuff like that they're worried about, like certain things that they've noticed that looks a little off, and maybe more likely that we'll see in this updated trailer will be fixed. And so I just wanted to cover that because there's plenty of things I could talk about that are really great, like seeing the Halo Elite design go back to more of a classic look and those kind of styles, and it looks really great. But I just want to talk about some of the things that are the concerns that hopefully we're going to see get addressed. So talking about some of the things right off the bat is the campaign demo. The campaign demo, I think, was probably the biggest thing that just showed lots of issues with it and a lot of things that 343 had to address, and probably why they had to just delay because it just clearly was not ready. So some of the things that I noticed was like the recharging effect from the gameplay was like really bad. It was distracting with these big hexagons just all over the place, and it was kind of distracting. The weirdest part was the fact that it went past the player's hands and weapons. So for some reason, even though it's supposed to be your visor, it looks like as if it's like way past the gun, and I'm not sure why, but a lot of people said it was like really distracting and wanted to turn it off, and even some people even made like pictures of how they could improve it, make it look better. And I actually liked some of the things they showed of how they could actually make it look more improved instead, and that was just some of the things that people brought up. Also, a lot of people noticed that there was visual and audio issues. There was all sorts of things like frame dropping, clipping, draw distance issues, like the grass was popping in and out, the environment in the background was popping in and out, and like noticed that like even though it was already low res textures, it looked even lower if you looked at the background. Like textures you could see were obviously popping in and out of from different levels of detail that were way too noticeable. There was like lighting and reflection issues that were just really bad. It just looked really off. And again, audio cutouts that people just noticed were just like sounds that were just like clipping and stuff like that. Those were some other issues that people noticed. The biggest thing that everyone's going to say right off the bat that they were concerned about was the graphics. Obviously we've seen updates to the graphics and it's starting to look a lot better than what we saw, but we were definitely concerned when we saw those graphics that looked just last gen, and there was like a lot of people trying to say, oh, it looks perfectly fine, it looks great. I don't know why everyone's complaining, but it looked like it was way last gen. It didn't even look like anything that was on par with games like Halo 5 and Halo 2 Anniversary graphically, and yet people were sitting there saying, oh, stop complaining, it looks perfectly fine. But it was really bad, and I'm actually glad to see the fact that they got drastically improved and looked way better than they were. Some of those graphic issues was actually the pillar textures. The pillar textures, a lot of people jokingly mocked about it looking like something from Minecraft, and like everywhere you just saw it just thrown all over the place, and it just kind of looked really bad just having so many of them, and it just looked like that it was just dull and lifeless. There were just like these gray hexagon structures, and it was just like no details on them, nothing that looked anything standing out. I think they showed like a new update where there's less of them and they look more lifelike, they look more part of the environment and less like something that just completely stands out. It just looks, you know, sword to the eye, or eyesore, or whatever you want to call it. Also, some of the new weapon designs and functionality looked pretty bad as well. Like it was just like you saw some of these older weapons that we've seen from previous Halo games, like the Hydra, the AR, the BR, the sniper rifle, the rockets. They looked actually pretty amazing in the Halo Infinite showcase when they're showing them off. They looked really nice and detailed from different screenshots. But some of the other weapons, like the sidearm, the commando rifle, the bulldog, they look like modern human sci-fi weapons and not like Halo sci-fi weapons. They didn't look like they fit in the Halo universe. They just felt generic, and some people joking jokingly even said like the Commando and the Bulldog and the sidearm, they looked like something you see from like a Call of Duty Modern Warfare game. They didn't look like they had any unique style. They did say that you know, obviously they made some changes recently to the design, but a lot of people were worried about that, about how it just didn't look like it was anything that would fit in a Halo universe. But I mean, I'm glad that they did show like the sidearm. Apparently, they went a silhouette from one of the recent shots that they showed. Even though they didn't show it actually visually there, they showed that it was like some changes had gone through for that weapon, and hopefully maybe the Commando and the Bulldog got some updated looks to themselves to make them feel more in line to a Halo Unit C weapon rather than just a generic sci-fi shotgun or generic sci-fi commando rifle. Some of the other things that people were worried about was like their purposes. Like for example, the commando rifle, what's the purpose? Like we already have a BR for burst fire, we already have a DMR for semi-fire distance, we already have a sniper rifle for long distance headshots, we already have an SMG, we already have a SAW, we already have an assault rifle. So what's the purpose of this commando? Is it just another generic weapon? Is it just like, how does it fit into the sandbox? As well as also the classic shotgun and Magnum were getting replaced with these two other weapons. And the thing is that the pistol, for example, the sidearm, looks nothing like it functions like all the ones that we're used to seeing, like with Reach, CE 3, 4, and 5. These look more like something that would function in Halo 2, Halo ODST kind of pistol, where it's low damage and just fast firing. And so some people were disappointed by that. They said you know, that they're going to make some changes to them. Besides the sidearm, the shotgun was a little bit concerning as well, because this was the one that most people actually had a real problem with, because unlike something where you just bump the damage up and lower the fire rate or something like that, the Bulldog, however, had a lot of other problems when people looked at, like, because looking at it, looked like it was drum fed. So does that mean you have to fire every single clip and you can't reload it? And if you do, is it some like slow little reload? How is it going to work? Is it just going to be you just drop a mag or drop a drum mag and then just pop another one in, it's already full? Or are you going to have the slow reloading process? Because that's what one of the things that was really great with infection modes with the shotgun was that, like, worry about like you only have a few shots, and once you run out you got to do that slow reload and have that tension behind it. Now is it you just drop it and you just slam another drum mag and you're automatically full, or you can have the slow process of reloading. So a lot of people were worried about that functionality. They did again say that they were possibly thinking about that they're gonna possibly bring back the classic shotgun and Magnum later on, but that's, you know, up in the air kind of situation. Also the naming conventions of the weapons, especially with the commando rifle and the Bulldog, I think were kind of like the most like didn't feel correct or didn't feel like it fit, because every single weapon with Halo, when you noticed it, was always named after a specific thing, even though there's a classified name for each weapon. So that's why there's certain sniper rifles that look different. They're actually different types, but in Halo it's just called a sniper rifle when you're playing the video game. When you have a rocket launcher, it's just a rocket launcher. So when you had people that were just like, when you have these weapons that are just like called Bulldog, it's like, what's a Bulldog? Like if you say an assault rifle, that's the AR, that's the, you know, that weapon. If you have a fast firing human weapon, it's an SMG. Every weapon kind of had its place of understanding what it was. When you say energy sword, you assume a sword, it does sword damage, but when you hear Bulldog, what's a Bulldog? It kind of, those names kind of sounded a little bit COD Battlefield-ish, where it was like Commander Rifle and Bulldog. You know, it is kind of cool that with the whole weapon type display, like showing whether it's auto or burst or what kind of type of weapon damage it does. But the name of the weapons was kind of just like a little off-putting. Instead of like just calling it a shotgun, or at least call this like a semi-auto shotgun or something like that, give it some like name that's more understandable. They just called like a random name, which with not too much variety of weapons, I get that they want to start adding more weapon variety, but if you add too many, it starts losing the competitiveness of it, because you have so many weapons. It's like, are certain weapons just not going to be even allowed in competitive tournaments, like how they did with Halo 5, where they just threw out all automatics, everything was just down to semi-weapons or precision-based weapons? But yeah, it's kind of hard to understand what are they going to do with these, and why are they naming them the way they are. Like, seriously, why are we calling the Bulldog just a semi-auto shotgun or something like that? Yeah, I'm not sure if it is pump action, but like it's just weird instead of just like calling it a shotgun. calling it a rocket launcher. And you see that all the other weapons do that in the game. You see the BR, you see the sniper rifle, you see them called what they are, and then you have these other weapons that are just called commando rifle. And it's like, okay, but what does it do? If I hear battle rifle, I think of precision, but when I hear commando, what is it? Bulldog, what is it? But sorry to go off too much on that, but it's just the naming of the weapons. A lot of people had issues with it, like myself. It's just like, well, why are we calling it this? It kind of doesn't fit the style of what they usually name weapons in Halo. Also, with the brutes, the biggest joke of the whole thing was the whole hairless brute Craig, but and also the fact that the armor designs were like plastic and too clean. Even people on Reddit showed some really cool designs of what they could do and try to alter and change it to make it look a little bit better. So they did show that they did actually start adding them goatees from a recent picture, but they still kind of look a little low res. Not sure if it's the draw distance, but that was one of the concerns. There's like, it just looks really bad, and again, a lot of fans made some improvement like drawings to make it look a little bit better. Also, another issue was the shooting projectiles. Some projectiles, like the burst carbine that they were showing, the projectiles looked really huge, like big and chunky for something supposed to be a burst weapon. And it's like, when it's shooting, it's kind of a little bit, doesn't feel like a burst weapon, because if you see like a carbine, it's more like this small linear weapon, but if you shoot like a plasma rifle, it's got these big chunks. So you had this one, it kind of like felt weird. I get the trying to go for a middle ground, but I think it should have been more of a like linear, like a carbine, but like slightly chunkier, but it was like a long projectile maybe, instead of like this big chunky projectile that shoots out, and it just kind of looks weird. But because I'm not sure if it even affects the gameplay of like being that big, if it's going to hit other objects before hitting the target. But that was just one thing I noticed. But it is cool, the fact they're having a burst fire carbine weapon. And then the other one was the Needler. The Needler, its projectiles are not even noticeable in gameplay when you were watching the demo. A lot of times when they were shooting the projectiles, it was like you couldn't even see them until they were too late, which it's great for if you're the one using a Needler in a PvP match, but otherwise you can't really dodge these things because you don't even see them when they're coming at you until it's too late. And if you look at all the past Halo games, when you see Needler, you see it. It's like the pink mist of death when you see it, because obviously the super combine effect. So that was some other things that people worried about, the projectiles. Also, another thing was the Phantom. The Phantom just, I don't know what was up with that. It was moving like as if it was on rails, all clunky, and it didn't feel natural how it was moving at all. And then with some of the other stuff, like the design of it, it just looked like it was this Mega Bloks Halo Wars 2 straight ripped out and plugged into Halo Infinite. It didn't look like something that fit a really good design, and it just looked really weird looking to stare at. Some of the other things, and I was going to get a little controversial, I guess, with these ones, is like the grapple hook. I'm not going to say the grapple hook is a bad thing. Again, these are all just concerns. They're not like, oh, it's bad or whatnot, but it's just like, how is it going to affect the game, and how is it, are these going to get addressed? So with the grapple hook, a lot of it is like, you notice that the grapple hook is used a lot for certain things, and it's like almost a question of how is it going to affect the single player? Is it going to affect the exploration? Is everyone just going to resort to grapple hooks for everything to get everywhere? And it's like almost like, in a way, almost like I don't think there's really even a use for clamber except for small ranges. You can just grapple hook almost to every point, and then it makes it kind of like too easy of an exploration, too easy to get around maps and stuff like that. But we'll see. Obviously we don't know, but that's just some of the concerns that people are worried about, and also how it'll affect the gameplay. They keep saying that it'll be balanced, but I just don't take people's word for it. How is it going to be balanced? Can we actually see how it's going to be balanced? So that's kind of the thing, because what's going to happen if someone say has a grapple hook, the other person does it, and they see a power weapon, they could just, Spider-Man grab it and bring it to them. Can they do that in multiplayer? How's that going to work? So a lot of those things are concerned of how that's going to play out. Another thing that I want to mention, it's not like really I'm concerned about, I'm just concerned about the balance of the equipment, but I've been seeing a lot of misinformation when it comes to the equipment. I saw something like, I think it was Fabian, don't know if it was him or someone else, but they were talking about how the classic equipment, like in Halo 3, was more neutral and non-lethal, like deployable covers in Halo 3 is different from Halo Infinite drop shields. And he is correct, like there is like some things that are noticeable about that when you did a deployable cover in Halo 3, that you could only actually shoot out this small little section of the drop shield from one side. So to me that's not even neutral, because because of the fact that you can shoot one direction out of it. But with the Halo Infinite drop shield, it's like this huge wall that you can shoot out of, look out of any end and shoot out of. So to me, it's like, wait a second, how is that supposed to be balanced if you can literally just, that whole entire wall, you can sit back with a sniper rifle and shoot people and they can't shoot you? And it's just like, yeah, it's kind of concerning how that would be balanced. But the thing is, though, is like one of the people said like, oh yeah, the drop shield was both directions, so even if you dropped it, they can't shoot you and you can't shoot them. But I'm like, yeah, you can. There's a little hole right in the center where you can shoot out of. I think even Uber Nick finally showed a video about that got popular, but I knew that way back in the day that you could shoot out of that. In fact, there's a spot in Crow's Nest in Halo 3 where I dropped the drop shield and used the machine gun to shoot out of. It was really funny. You could shoot a whole bunch of drones with it. I did it for like several challenges for MCC, but that was something I noticed. And then also with this whole thing about equipment being neutral in Classic, it wasn't neutral and it wasn't non-lethal. There was several of them that did affect gameplay. So like, for example, the trip mine, that definitely kill you if you walked over it. The power drain would strip away your shields. Both the power drain and the radar jammer, if they exploded, would push players to even do small amounts of damage, if I remember. So that wasn't actually true, but that was something that I thought was interesting that people would say that, because they're holding the equipment to an unrealistic standard that wasn't actually true back in the day. The last couple things that I wanted to see that people were a little bit concerned about was the fact that with the environment all being North American woodland and that there's not going to be multi-environments, and that's kind of just a little bit off-putting, because I mean, not only when you look at Halo you clearly see that in Infinite that there's obviously snow areas and desert areas, but I guess everywhere you travel to it's going to be just North American woodland, which is kind of just, I don't know, it's just really weird, because every single Halo game, when you go on to the Halo ring, you experience different environments. You've experienced the deserts, and the rings are different on the deserts, the snow, the jungle, the swamps. There was different areas that you could go to. I've never been in any Halo game where you're on a Halo ring and there wasn't different environments on it, but yet here we are with Infinite and there's none of that, and it's kind of weird the fact that they have no other environments besides woodland. And so hopefully maybe in like a future update they change that, but that was just something that's like really weird, the fact that they only have one setting for the entire game. Also, the last thing that we saw from the campaign trailer last time we saw it a year ago was that there's going to be no hostile wildlife, they told us. I mean, I wasn't too surprised about it. I'm not going to make that a huge gripe, but I know a lot of people are hoping to see like some sort of like environmental hazard like the Goutas, or what do they call them in Halo Reach, stuff like that, where it's like lethal environment stuff, but maybe have those rhinos charge at you. But they said that that's not going to be in the game, so I'm totally okay with that. But that was just some things that people were concerned about with what they were showing versus what they were coming out with. The next couple concerns, two different ones for the campaign screenshot that they showed just recently that people were like all amazed by, and it did look great. But two concerns that people noticed was the low-res textures of some of the characters. I think this is still just an issue of draw distance, and also possibly the way they were showing things with the different field of views. But anyways, yeah, that's what people noticed, was that there's obviously no, that the brutes still look a little lacking of hair, even though they finally gave them goatees. But other than that, they do look like they're just low detailed still. Another issue someone pointed out that they noticed was the issues with the grunts, both the fact that they all have the same animation and one of them's even clipping through a wall. This one, though, I know why this is kind of like an obvious dead giveaway, that it's stage scene with placeholder characters. That way you are seeing what you're seeing is not actually gameplay, but rather just enemies and objects placed in a set animation scattered around the map to show off what you can expect to see in the field of view and what the environments will look like, and that's not actual gameplay that you're looking at. So that's why they all have the same animation for the grunts. They're all just placed around the map and just rotate in different areas. They're not actually there, even though people think that's actual gameplay and that they're all waking up and all using the same same animation, but more likely they're not using the same animation. It's just the set way they have it. And that one grunt that's clipping through the wall, that's because he's almost like a phased object in Forge. He has no collision mesh, so when they're placing them around the map, they can easily just go through the map. So that's why they look like that. But it's actually because they're not actually physically there. They're just set placeholder pieces. They're not actual AIs playing. But again, this could be either because of the fact of the environments that they were just trying to show off, which do look great, or because of that field of view that they're just trying to show. So that's why it looks like it's a little off-putting, but it still works. But hopefully in the finished single player levels that it's actually done, and hopefully it's not the case that they're still working on it and it's still not finished. Then there's the issues with the multiplayer. Now, some of the things here are like the sprint, clamber, and slide returning, but nerfed to fit some sort of middle ground. Though they nerfed to the point where you almost ask, why is it still even in the game? Because it serves almost no purpose. As you know, so the slide, clamber, and sprint are almost like non-existent, but they still exist there. And the problem with the middle ground is it doesn't achieve anything. If you're trying to achieve it for the classic players, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, I love this. And if it's because they don't want to see it at all, for any of these locked animations. And also when you have all the people that are for Halo 5, they don't like that because of the fact that it's so nerfed down that they might just stick with Halo 5 when it comes to the multiplayer. So having this middle ground basically makes you wonder what's the purpose if it's not going to be classic or modern, and trying to go for some sort of middle ground that it's not really going to do anything. The only thing I would say here is that all these people that are claiming to do these negative feedbacks for when the flight comes and just going to complain about sprint being in the game until they remove it, there's no point of you guys doing that, because at this stage the maps already been designed the way they have. I already can see just by the look of the maps that obviously clearly that the maps are slightly stretched in order to fit these and accommodate them. Because if you see how the Master Chief jumps in the video game and you look at these player model sizes and where they are on the walls and stuff like that, clearly they have to clamber to get to certain spots. There's no way to do any crouch jumping, so they kind of just look like they're going to force you to do these kind of things. And again, kind of the problem with pro teams to blame here for this, because when it comes down to it, they did have the most vocal thing that they could have said about it. So if they're not being vocal about it, this is why you're going to be getting sprint, clamber, and all these things. But again, complaining about them in a flight and threatening to give bad feedback in order to hope that it's somehow going to get sprint removed, there's no point. It's already too far at this point. Some of the other things that people are worried about, again, with the whole thing of having a pro team being focused on everything, is that the gameplay is going to be so focused on competitive gameplay that the casuals will get sidelined again, just like they did in Halo 5, and that it's all set like day one for competitives, while the casuals have to wait weeks, even months, to get any of their content, and then possibly risk losing population like Halo 5 did. I would have to say, though, the one thing that's most concerning for me, at least, is the armor coating issue. Everyone's been talking about how they took away your ability to choose colors, so you have to choose these armor coatings. So plenty of other people said there's other ways they could have gone about this, how they could have made it so that you could have just the basic color choosing option, and then have armor coating as a secondary choice where you can actually put on cooler looking stuff as shaders. But unfortunately, that's not what they did. They just decided to remove the primary secondary color, and that was, upsetting for a lot of people that are used to having that feature, especially people that had enjoyed playing games like Halo 5 and Halo 3, but they able to choose their 3 different color sets, or 2, I'm not sure for Halo 5, but yeah, the fact that you had the ability to choose all those colors and now you can't. And one of the biggest problems that people don't like is the Watchdog armor coating skin that you can only get if you get to 152 in Halo 5. There's so many problems with this. The first part of this is that previously 343 said that there would be no exclusives, and now all of a sudden they're telling you that there's exclusives, and if you don't get to 152, you're not going to be able to get it, after just telling us that if you tried to get to 152 that you were debating yourself. But then all of a sudden they decided to change it around at the last second with less than a year, telling you, oh yeah, if you want to get this exclusive armor, you have to get to 152 all of a sudden. So they just changed it on people after most people just said, nah, I'm not going to get to 152. So now they just basically basically screwed out all these people that wanted to get to it. So instead of just making like some sort of timed exclusive, now they're completely removing it, and so that's unfortunate. There's a bunch of other reasons that are bad with this Watchdog skin, but that's the first part of it is the fact that if you didn't grind for it, that you now miss out after just being told that you wouldn't miss out if you didn't grind. Also, the fact is that the color choices, they use red, black, and white, which a lot of people like to use, and now all of a sudden that's being taken away from players. So people like me that have used that color set now all of a sudden might not be able to use it because there's very low chance that they're going to make another variation with the same 3 colors that would completely devalue the Watchdog armor coating to get it. So now all of a sudden, if you don't do it the way they want you to, that you might not be able to get to use the color choices that you want to use. So in Halo 5 now, if you didn't get to 152, now you lose the ability to choose your own colors, and now the most popular one that a lot of people like to use for the 3 different color types that I use is no longer going to be usable. So if I want to use it, I'm just going to have to, on my PC, just go offline and use a mod in order to access it and be able to play with the skin, because 343 is now taking away that ability. So that's a thing that a lot of people are annoyed by, is the fact that they took away that option. And not just that, but also the Watchdog skin is an Xbox exclusive skin because of the fact that there is no Halo 5 matchmaking on PC, so you can't get to 152 unless you get an Xbox. So unfortunately, that's another problem. So anyone that wants to play from PC has no option to be able to get this. So basically, those 3 things alone, the fact that it takes away the skins, that color option that people get to choose from, unless you got this 152 Watchdog skin that you had to grind for something that you didn't even know existed until a year, like less than a year before this game comes out. And then on top of that, the fact is that it's Xbox exclusive. PC players will not be able to unlock this. So that's just some of the downsides of it. Also, the fact is that there is no elites and dual wielding. Obviously, as we see with Season 7, that people actually were pretty hyped to the fact that there's getting new skins for elites in Halo 3. But all of a sudden, 343 is just saying, like, when it comes to elites, that all of a sudden we're not going to have it. And it's kind of interesting because even though every 343 game has never had elites or dual wielding, excluding Halo 2's multiplayer, they said that they wanted to go to a classic, more of a classic look, but yet they're trying to go back to classic, but yet they're not going to have the things that made it classic, like kimboing dual SMGs while playing as your Dino Iguana boy. Nope, can't do that. So apparently that's just going to be something that's not going to happen now. They did try to say never, but you know, obviously that's not something you can hold them by, that they'll keep committed to. The last thing I want to talk about was some of the general stuff, like some of the things that they're worried about is when this game releases, will it be content and feature rich at launch, or is it just going to be another bare bones Halo 5 or a broken MCC at launch? That's something that a lot of people were worried about. Some of the things that people were worried about was originally that there wasn't even going to be a flighting. They promised that they would have one, then all of a sudden in 2020 they were even starting to slow say the words of like, we're going to not have a flighting, before they decided to completely cancel the game and delay for an entire year. And now they're talking about potentially that we are going to see flighting now finally, but that was a thing that a lot of people are concerned about. Another thing that they said was that there would be no ray tracing support at launch, which was kind of weird for them to be saying that all of a sudden that they were talking about how Xbox Series X would have it, but all of a sudden now it's not going to have it till later on. Again, it's been delayed. Hopefully it's going to be there at launch, but that was a lot of like, why are you going to release a game with certain things just not there? And then another issue that was also is the lacking of core features. Halo 5 was a big time of problem of this, where they had the missing forage mode, firefight, several game modes, the fact that theater was broken, there was no real social, campaign was just not that great. So all you really had at launch was arena. That was about it. And a lot of people just said, screw this, after about a month of it, and just left. And it was kind of just annoying, the fact that it was just lacking. And that's what a lot of people were worried about here, is when they asked 343 this question, that 343 just avoided the question altogether. They didn't want to answer it. So it was clear that they were starting to chop everything off and just trying to cut everything out like a cutting room floor, just trying to make it to the finish line, and we're just cutting off all the good features, all the core features that people were looking for. One of the last things is the whole 4-player split screen. They've completely changed what they said on this, but that it's only going to be 2-player split screen, and tried to reword what they said, but clearly that wasn't true. I don't have the live stream film, but I did watch it, and they flat out said that it'd be 4-player split screen, and now they've changed it to, oh no, you can just play campaign with 4 players in co-op, and you can split screen 2 players, which was not what they said. But because the mixer's gone and the VODs are missing, where they never implied there'd be 2-player split screen, but with 4-player co-op, they just flat out said 4-player split screen. But I always knew that due to draw distance issues and other stuff like that, that I was very skeptical in the first place how they would even be able to do this, because it's not like split screen is just like you divide your screens up and that's it. That it's actually doubling your frame rates, it's doubling your input, it's doubling everything, because the fact that it's a lot harder to manage, especially in Halo Reach. If you try to play with 4 players in split screen, it causes a huge technical issue. So because of that, it was just a very surprising fact that they even said 4 players. So I'm not really bothered the fact that it's going to 2-player split screen, but the fact that they were telling everyone one thing and now all of a sudden changing it to another, just so, and then saying that, oh, that's not what we said, but it clearly was. Everyone that reported it, everyone that talked about it, all the news articles, gaming articles talked about it, and then all of a sudden, oh no, that's not what we said at all. And it's unfortunate that no one really clipped it, I don't think, so there's no real way to watch anymore because Mixer's no longer around. But yeah, they completely backtracked on that statement. But again, I wasn't too surprised. The fact that split screen in general is just hard to work with. It's not that they were intentionally trying to just say, oh, we're not going to do split screen to get more people to buy Xboxes. It's just the fact that split screen is a really hard functionality to work with, especially with new games, with the graphical enhancements and other features that come with it. And lastly was the microtransactions. That's a big thing that everyone's been concerned about a lot, about how is it going to work with these free-to-play players with paid players. The fact that just because you pay, you get a campaign, that's it. So the campaign's $60. How is this going to work? I mean, what are paid players going to get over the free players other than a campaign? Are they going to get free DLC, some exclusive cosmetics, some earlier access? Also, are cosmetics really going to be so egregious and aggressive, pushed and force the grind to pressure people to pay money for cosmetics, and even making some only accessible with real money, which a lot of people are seeing repeats of Gears 5 encumbrance, encumbering like problems where the game is so grindy that people just stopped playing altogether, because just to get even a basic execution that was already a default in past Gears games for a curb stop now costs you $5. It was just like they were just nickel and diming you the entire way, and people are worried about how that's going to work, and especially how is it going to work if you paid $60 for this game? Did you just pay $60 and all you get is the campaign? Are you going to have to pay for all the DLC for the campaign that comes out, or is it free? How is it going to work? So a lot of people are worried about that, like, where are we going to get the money? And also, is the game going to turn into this egregious grind fest in multiplayer? And is it the fact that any of the stuff that you want to be able to use in campaign that you unlock, that you can only unlock it through multiplayer, and that the only stuff you can unlock through multiplayer is to a huge grind? So in order to just use some basic cosmetic stuff in the campaign, you have to unlock it through the grindy PvP. So that's a lot of stuff that people are worried about. Anyways, that's just some of the stuff that I've seen other people like concerned about, and just wanted to mention and see what we're gonna see with the whole Halo Infinite E2021 launch, or E3 2021 launch, and see what they're gonna show us at the live stream, if there's gonna be improvements that they show, and if they're gonna address all these concerns. And that's about it. Anyways, I'll have links in the description, anything you guys want like that. Anyways, you guys take care. Bye.